All right, we all know that the college recruiting world has changed. And if you don't have the right guidance, it's going to be really easy to feel overwhelmed or fall behind. So today we're joined by Luke Rice, founder of Uncommon Journey Recruiting Services, to share his personal story of helping his daughter Crimson achieve her dream of playing D1 softball. We'll uncover the lessons he learned and the challenges he faced and she faced, and how he's using that experience to help other athletes navigate this new and competitive landscape. So Luke is specialized in softball. However, the things that we're going to talk about today is going to apply for any athlete trying to play at the next level. Luke, thanks for joining us today on the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. So let's just start off with, I really want to set the foundation of Crimson's story and how that ties into everything that we'll talk about today. And so let's start right from square one. When did Crimson first commit to pursuing D1 softball, and what did that decision look like for you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's one of those things where she started like most girls do, or like most athletes do. They start, at age 9 for her was where it's where she just said, hey, I'd like to play softball. Actually, she was playing volleyball, and a coach saw her and thought she was pretty athletic, and said, hey, I'm looking for another player for our softball team. And she's like, I'd like to try that, And so we were like, as parents, we're like, well, go do that. And so we did. And, she goes out into left field. So she was out in left field. She's learning the game. She's out there, and first kind of club experience. And as she's sitting out in left field, she's looking at the pitcher, who's a very close friend of hers, even to this day, and says, I want to do that. I want to pitch. And when she came to me, she's like, that's a whole nother level. And so it's like, I'm like, well, and we call her Crim, hey, Crim, that's like another level of commitment that I don't know if you know what you're getting into. And she's like, no, I want to pitch. And so I was like, well, after the season, if you still want to pitch, we'll go down that road, and I'll find the right instructor, and we'll kind of go down that road. Okay, Dad, sounds good. And then I'm not joking. The second that the season was over, this was like 2 or 3 months later. Yeah. The second that season's over, she's like, Dad, when can I pitch? And I was like, I thought you forgot about that. And so
I know, especially at that age, they're so easy to forget those.
Yeah, I thought that was just like a thought, and then like off she goes. That was not. It was a when do I get to pitch? And I was like, whoa, with like the season like literally just ended. That's the kind of person that we're dealing with. So then I was like, all right, well, I'll go do that. So I went, found a pitching instructor. She starts pitching. The team that we were on was great, but she got pretty good pretty quick because she just worked. And then we decided to, after that season was over, we moved to a different, more of a regional team. Had a wonderful experience, and this was at 12U. She was at 12U, and had a great experience as a team out of Lewiston, Idaho. But most of that team was moving up, and she had another year of eligibility. And so we were like, well, what do we do? And she's like, Dad, I want to play with the best. And we were like, well, all right. And at that time, there just really wasn't anything around here. There just really isn't anything in Spokane at that time that was going to kind of get to push her to playing with athletes and girls at a higher level. And so I did some research, and the team out of Seattle, which was the Washington Lady Hawks, which is a big premier team, one of the best teams in the state. We tried out for that team, and she made that team. And so now, though, it was one of those decisions. It's like, I didn't know if she was going to make that team. So we didn't really kind of have that discussion. Although in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if she makes this team? That means I'm going to have to like take her to practice,
yeah,
and do all the things. And so sure enough, she makes a team. And so now it turns, and we always told her, I said, we've, as my wife and I said, hey, we will support you 100% in whatever you want to do, but you're going to have to be the one to kind of take the lead. And then we'll follow that lead. But I'm not going to drag you out of bed, or I'm not going to drive you over there if this isn't something that, you don't want to do, or I'm the one having to take you, motivate you and do all the things. And it never happened once. She was ready to go. Let's go. So I drive her to Seattle every single weekend. I mean, even the people
For context, for those who don't know, this is Spokane to Seattle. This is what, like 5 hours, 6 hours?
It's a 5-hour drive. Yep. One way. So it's 10 hours. I
want to make sure for the audience that's not in Washington State, I want to put that context.
That's good. We got to put that on there. Yeah. So that's 5 hours one way, 10 hours round trip. And they had 2 practices. They had practices Saturday night from like about 6 to 10. And then we had practice from like 8 to noon on Sunday. So we had two practices, and then we pack up, and then we're driving back. That was our routine every single weekend. But that's where it happened for her. This was an elite team. Most of these girls that were at 12U back then, who are now graduated, most of these girls are playing collegiate softball. So at a very high level, D1, D2, D3, like this team was loaded with talent, and coaching staff is a higher level, just expectations higher level, the level of like the exposure level, we're going nationally now. So this is kind of where it was like our aha moment, where this isn't kind of more of a local team where you kind of play regionally and you kind of play in these tournaments. This was like, no, we are about going bigger and getting these girls that exposure level, which that's what happened. And I can come back to that in a minute, but that's where it just kind of, it's like, okay, like this is way different. And then we stayed on that team, although the coaches, they left the organization and they created another organization called the AI Bandits Breer team. Same coaches, they just kind of dovetailed. And so basically the whole team followed the coaching staff. The AI Bandits Breers are a premier team in the state as well now. So now we have Washington Ladyhawks, we have AI Bandits Breer, kind of just two big teams in the area that really are about developing these players and taking them to the next level. And that's the level of coaching that they're receiving. And we're playing the best of the best in the country. So, and then after that, we were there with them for 2 years. So a total of 3 years in Seattle, driving back and forth. And then my daughter was injured. She had a stress fracture in her hip. She started having pain in her hip. She's a pitcher. And so she just one of those things. And you talk about, it's a natural motion, and you talk all those things, which is, there's a lot of things there, but there's a lot of repetitiveness to that motion. And so she had a stress fracture in her hip, which then caused us to pause. So she missed the remainder of the season, and that, tough to be out. But it a transformational experience for her. But because she had to be out, she was on crutches. So no surgery, but she had to be on crutches for 3 months, no weight bearing. And then from there, the hip had healed, and then now we're back into recovery. So now we're in a lot of the PT and building her back up. A lot of things happened there that just really, it boils down to she missed it so much. And her love of the game, she just loved it so much, and she missed it so much. And it just motivated her even more that she wants to play this game as long and as at the highest level possible. But we also had to kind of look at it like, okay, driving to Seattle for 3 years every weekend, that's a lot. Can we still accomplish those goals and still do the things we need to do? But is there other alternatives? Are there other teams that we could look at? And the Washington Angels out of the Tri-Cities is another one of the premier teams in the state, with Bob Benson and his whole coaching staff, phenomenal. And we decided, and we met with them, and he had heard of Crimson, and so, but we had a good discussion, and so he decided to take her on. And it's kind of a unique situation because she was 14U, so she had played 2 years of 14U, and she leapfrogged 16U and went right into 18U.
Jeez.
So we went right over 16, went right into 18 at the highest premier level.
Yeah.
And again, there's only a handful of these premier clubs around the state. So she leapfrogged that. And, part of us is like, did we, is that too much? Is that too big of a leap? It wasn't. Bob Benson and the whole coaching staff and the Angels, it was exactly what she needed and what she wanted from a softball level, from an exposure level, but also just from development from a personal level. There's a lot of things within the Angels organization that they do to help with mindset, to help with a lot of the things that are happening within the game. They really focus on that. And so she blossomed. And that's kind of where then we were playing right here. So I'm wearing this hat because we were playing in the IDT. It's a 4th of July tournament in Colorado. It's the top 50 teams in the country. And Crimson got noticed her sophomore year. She was actually pitching. There was 5 Division I schools watching her specifically. They were there to watch her. And then Stony Brook was also there, not watching her though. Coach Bryant, the coach of Stony Brook, was there watching a player on the opposite team that we were playing against, but happened to see Crimson throw. She threw very well. And that's where she got on Stony Brook's map. And we started having discussions, and then that led us to, and we were having discussions with many other schools as well. So this wasn't the only school, many other D1 schools that were interested, and we started having these discussions and we're going down those roads. But Stony Brook is truly the one that she connected with, felt we did our recruiting visits. We did all the things, went through all of that. And she felt, and it's her decision, 100% her decision. She decided this is where she wanted to call home. This is where she just felt most connected and where she wanted to continue. And we said, absolutely. And loved it. And now she's there. So that's kind of a small little story of kind of just our journey, but it's insane. I mean, we hadn't even touched, some of the stuff, but that's kind of how it kind of led with club teams and injury and what do we have to decide? And so that's kind of what was her journey was like in a nutshell.
There's a few things I want to pull out of that. Number one, the fact that it was athlete led, like it was very much like Crimson led, where it's, okay, you want to do this, okay, like this is the commitment that's involved, and she went all in. And then even when there was the setbacks, she kept going. But the other piece I want to highlight too, and this goes into how you do your programming, and I mean really how I do mine too with nutrition, is you are evaluating throughout the process. You're assessing, oh, hey, like, is this going to Seattle? Is this an ideal thing after 3 years? Like, reevaluate that. Is the Tri-Cities assessing that piece of it? Like, having those check-ins, even at the beginning, like checking, like, okay, like, if you want to do this, this is what's required. Now, there was those regular check-ins, and I find that that's what helps a lot with my athletes that I see, a lot of my baseball guys especially, is when they have those opportunities to step back and be like, okay, like, what am I missing? Or am I on the right path? Or do I need to like change something? And this is where that individualized approach to it comes in. Like, how is that individualized or that more personalized plan? Like, number one, how did that help Crimson, and how can that help other athletes?
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, you're right. 100%. It's this process that you're going through and you're always reassessing. And we have with myself and Crimson, we had a very open dialogue. And so we're having these conversations because we're spending a lot of time in the car too, so you're having these discussions about, just, where we're at, what we're doing, what do we need to do, which is one of the reasons kind of why, and we can get to that in a little bit, but, it's why I created what I created, because I had so many questions. I mean, she's having questions. I have questions, and like, I don't know, I don't know the right answer to all of this. I'm still learning this process. But when I work with my athletes, so the athletes that I come in, that's why I'm working with them. And this isn't just like we meet one time and then we're done. I do talks, I do talks. I talk with teams, and I'm going out and having these discussions, meeting with parents, meeting with players, and we talk about the recruiting landscape. What is it? So they have to fully understand, what is this? What is the monster that we're looking at? So they have to understand it. And then what are some of the things that they need to be aware of? And so then I educate them. So it's kind of a higher level talk. But with my clients, we go deep dive, because that's what it's going to take because we're always reassessing. We're always going through this process of, so I do a deep dive. I offer a course every month. I do a course, and we go about an 8 hours worth. So they get a sense of what recruiting is, and we kind of talk about all aspects of it, so they're educated. But then I'm meeting with my clients every single month to have these conversations, because that's that reassessment piece that's happening all the time, and sometimes even more frequently. And we're talking about, the recruiting side, like what there's the steps that they're taking to get recruited, and we talk about some of those things. But we're also getting into, like we talked about, that holistic approach, and it's very individualized based on the player. Nutrition, we're talking about nutrition. What are they doing nutrition wise, sleep wise, recovery wise, which all have impact. Time management, are you creating a schedule? You can't fit in everything in one day. There's just only so much. So what are we doing? And again, you have to recognize these players have a window of time. There's only a window of time that they have. And sometimes I get these players on that are at 8th or 9th grade, which is cool, because that's actually kind of when we want to start this process, is that 8th or 9th grade, which is kind of tough because they don't know a whole lot. Kind of like, do I want to do this? Do I not? So I can understand that. Or I get people they're a junior, in high school. And so we have to accelerate this process a lot, because they're way behind. So then we have to kind of start individualizing. Here's what we have to do. Here's the plan for you, that we start getting into all these different levels to ensuring that they're doing the appropriate things, so that they can put themselves in the position to hopefully get recruited or hopefully get looked at. And I can never 100% guarantee that somebody working with me is going to get recruited. I just can't. There's too many variables. But What I can guarantee is, I go all in with my clients. We look at individually what we're trying to do. And not only is this about softball, this is about life. So we're looking at things that we're using softball, as a way to get from point A to point B and these experiences, but it's bigger than softball. This goes way bigger than that. And I know that. And so when we're talking about like my individualized approach, we're talking, how do you communicate with coaches? So written communication or verbal communication when you're on an official visit or you're meeting with a coach at a camp. There's ways to do this, and we need to do it the right way. Well, we got to talk about that. We got to practice that. We got to go through those steps. But those communication skills are going to be used after softball. So we need to ensure that these my players have really good communication skills or nutrition habits or hydration habits, recovery habits, all the things that we're trying to do. We want to help. Yes, it's going to help in the recruiting process, but there's also this piece afterwards that I want to give and invest in families and in players that want to, kind of see that other aspect of it. I want them to be successful in life. And so that's kind of that process. So that's why it gets so individualized, because it's just every girl's different. Every family is different. The goals are different. I mean, there's so many variabilities there. So my approach has to kind of be custom, but I also have to be realistic and kind of share, like, there are expectations. There are things that we are going to have to do at a certain level if this is what you want to do. And we got to try to make sure that they get there. So
yeah, no, and I like, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on too, is because I mean, number one, this has been personal for you. Like, number one, on your own journey, going to Wazoo and everything, and your wife's journey, but then also, again, Crimson's journey. And so that's what I think is really unique about your experience and how you can help these softball athletes, is because you've been down that road.
yep,
And going down that road, those feelings as a parent,
yep,
those feelings as an athlete. And so that's what I think can really make that process much more enjoyable, is when you have somebody passionate about getting you to where you need to be.
yep.
Yeah.
And that's how this whole thing started. Is when we had parents coming to me. There's not a lot of D1 athletes in softball kind of coming out of Spokane or Eastern Washington. It's just, there's not a lot in the state of Washington. So then you start having parents like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? What steps did you take? And then so I'm like, well, of course I'm going to help, because I'm the parent. I'm a part of the journey too. I'm a parent that had to say, this is what my daughter wants. I really didn't have anyone like me to go to, because there was really, I would kind of talk with this person, I'd talk with that person, I'd talk with college coaches, we talk with all kinds of things to get a sense of what is it that we need to be doing. And then we created this plan that we followed. But I also felt like I was in the dark half the time. I'm like, I don't know. Is this the right way? I don't know. And we know we have a window of time, but I don't know if this is the right way until you start seeing things starting to happen. Okay, that's what coach invites Crimson to a camp. Okay, and now we're at the camp. There's protocols when you're pre-camp, post-camp. Like we rolled those out. We started seeing good results, and we kind of just kept doing that. But so then parents started coming to me. How are you doing this? What do you do? And so that's, of course, I'm going to share. But then over the course of time, I'm just starting to get more and more, just people wanting the same thing, but really don't have a clue about where to go, what to do. And that's how this whole thing happened, which is where it's like, I think I have a greater purpose than what I'm doing, and I have a full-time job, but this was one of those things where it's like, this is now what I want to do, and kind of go in a different direction to where I can help families in these situations, because now I have as a parent myself, and with an athlete, we've been through it. How can I then really pivot and help these now families wanting the same thing? How can I help them? And that's kind of where now I've just invested a lot of my time and resources into this, because that's kind of where my passion lies now.
Yeah. So remind me when Crimson graduated high school.
Just in 2024. So she just graduated. So she just graduated from in 2024. So she's a freshman right now. And so she starts the season. They start the season here in 2 weeks. They'll be down in Florida. They open up with Iowa State and Indiana, and off she goes. But she loves it. It's all new. She's a freshman and competing, trying to earn her playing time and just transitioning into the college D1 level. There's a lot that goes into that. So it's been an interesting journey for that too.
Yes. One, and the reason I asked too is because I mean that's part of what I want to highlight anytime I bring somebody on related to recruiting is this changing landscape. And so, like 2024 was kind of, I feel like the first year. Wait, when did she commit? Was it junior or
She
senior year?
commit so she verbally committed in 22. So
Oh,
like, well, we went on a visit, and so the college, they can't talk to you until your junior year. So that would have been 2023, fall of 2023, where we we went out, did a visit, and we met, and she verbally committed, in kind of end of fall of her junior year.
okay.
And then obviously, and then signed her senior year. And then off she goes.
So how do you feel like this changing landscape, like I don't know if it can even be seen on the whiteboard when I'm talking, not the one on the wall, but I have another whiteboard, but
Oh,
I have the stats, the percentages of like the athletes making it to that next level. And I think
yeah,
if I remember
I
right
have them
for
right here.
softball, it's still there you go. It's like, from, I think the last stats we have are from like 2 years ago or
Yep,
something, and it's like
yep.
1 to 3% depending on the sport. And now, I'm hearing a lot more of like this is going to get even smaller number, especially with that D1 level. Like what do you feel like has to be different for those athletes still dreaming of playing D1?
Yeah, great question. The landscape is changing. But really what hasn't changed is that this is the message that I talk about, and I'm very transparent about it. Is the percentages are against you. They're against you. When you're looking at, so like if we took all of college softball, D1, D2, D3, and then you get into NAIA, and then you get into JUCO. So you have this kind of, those are the kind of past high school in this bubble. You're looking in and around 8%. 8% of athletes. So a very, would get that opportunity to then, from the high school level, to then play in the college level. And then at D1, it's even less. I mean, you're looking at, so then you kind of break down those percentages per,
Mhm.
and Division One, you're at like 1.9%. 1.9% is going to be playing Division One. And then you can just kind of do the math on those percentages. They're very small percentages all the way down. So I don't think most people fully understand what that. So when that hits you in the face, and you're like, okay, then the next question is, well, how do you separate yourself? Because there's all these other athletes that are wanting the same thing. And that's where these discussions have to happen is what is it that you have to do to separate yourself from the rest? And there's so many things, and that's where I come in, because it's just not one thing, it's multiple things
Yeah.
that have to happen, that we talk about, that I talk about, that we have to integrate into the player's mindset, and into what they're trying to do. But it starts with one thing first. Like the one thing that has to happen first is, and this kind of relates back to my story with Crimson, and our story is, you have to have a goal.
Mhm.
You have to have the goal. You have to have it, like, what is it that you want? And a lot of times it's like, I'll say, well, and I'm talking to these athletes, well, like, do you want to play college softball? Yeah, everyone raises their hand. But it's like, that's great. Well, why? Let's get to the why, because why do you want to play? Why? And what goals do you have? You raised your hand when I asked the question, but what are your goals to get there? And then they're looking at me like, well, I didn't get to that next step of setting anything. And I'm like, well, that's a problem, because we're not going to get anywhere. So we got to set the goals. We have to have the goals. We have to have it in front of us and have direction. And then that's where I come in. Okay, first we got to have a direction. Next, we got to start filling in these pieces of, and I call them like essential foundation level components, things that you have to be doing, not just once a week. This is a lifestyle, and I know you know all about this. This is, from a nutritional side, from a dietary side, from just being an athlete. Like you have to then start creating a lifestyle that's going to match up with your goals if you're even going to have a chance to do this.
Mhm.
So then we start getting into the individualized component of each athlete. What are they doing? What are they not doing? And how do we create the plan? Because the odds are against us, and so how do we do that? And that's where, this is why I call it, my company it's Uncommon Journey, because there is commonness to this. There's, like, we talk about, like, strength training, huge. Skills development has to happen. Nutrition, recovery, all the things, like, these things have to be happening. So those are common. Those are all the things that every athlete's going to have to be doing. But then there's this uncommon component, like the unknown. Then that's why, because there's so many other things that are going to be individualized to the family, to the parents, that are going to be so unique, which will, it'll make their story, so unique. And that's why you can never compare. I'll tell my athletes, it's like, you can't compare your journey with Crimson's journey or anybody else's journey that's playing at whatever division level that they're at. You can't compare it because there's just too many factors there that you just are going to be so different. But so there are commonness pieces that we have to look at, but we also have to incorporate, there's so many uncommon pieces to this too. And that's what makes your story unique, and that's what, and that's where I come into play. So that's why I named it that way, just because we deal with a lot of the uncommon, a lot of the things the unexpected that are going to be a part of everyone's story. So
yeah, and I mean, I think that's, again, going back to what you said earlier right there, was the why. I love that you bring that up to your athletes, and that's something when I do goal setting with my athletes, like that's one of the things that we address is like, what's your why? Because the why is what's going to get you going when you don't feel like getting up.
Yep.
When you don't feel like doing the work, like that why is what's going to keep you going.
Yep.
So tying that to, Crimson's journey, what do you feel like kept her going through the injury and all the different things? Like what do you feel like really drove her, like especially so early on, and then just through that process?
Yeah, there's a couple things that come to mind. Crimson's it's like she's a very goal-oriented person. So she's just kind of one of those individuals. It's like, if you put that out there, like she's going to want to so like with pitching. So she started pitching and it's like, well, there's like these mechanical things that have to be happening. And it was like this puzzle piece where she just has to she just threw herself into it. And through that process, there's all these little wins, we celebrate the little wins, all the little things that kind of come of it. But she just was very focused on just, getting better, and throwing herself. So she loved, we talked about like loving the grind or loving the journey. Like you just got to you don't want to allow that to just, you don't want to fast forward and get to the end. It's like, no, you kind of have to, love the journey that you're on, and it's going to be hard. It's what's going to shape you. It's what's going to, make you who you are through the process. So you got to just love the process. So we really talked about that a lot. And so she found the love of the game through the process, where, and we would celebrate the little wins. And then the setbacks that we had, we use that to get better, just use that as change the negative into a positive narrative. And so we just continue to do that. So she's just very goal oriented, but we just looked at the process of enjoy the process that you're on. And that's one thing that she did. Another thing too is she's highly competitive though. So if you would meet her on the street, she's the most kindest, gentlest person you'll ever meet. And she's very approachable and just, has a big following, which is great. But the second that she puts on her spikes and she's in the circle or she's competing, I look at her and she flips a switch. And you kind of have to flip the switch, when you're playing at a high level and you can just see this level of competitiveness that comes out of her. And you got to love to compete. So that was another thing that she just loves to compete. Like she wants to go head to head with the best, whether it's good or bad, she just loves to compete. So you kind of take that in. And then also kind of probably thirdly, through our journey, it's like you meet so many amazing people, through the time that we started to where we are now, the families that we've met, the players that we've met. Softball's a small world. Like any sport, it has its kind of its own little world. So we would meet these people and we bump into them at tournaments, and it's just like you kind of celebrate with each other. You're just bumping and how are things going? And you just have this softball family that is amazing, where you just, and so that was another thing where and then you take it down to another level of just her teammates. So just that camaraderie. She loves the camaraderie with her teammates. From every team that she's been on, she's just had that camaraderie. And even now, so being at Stony Brook, the camaraderie with her teammates, it's an amazing group of athletes that she just loves. So yeah, so there's probably kind of those kind of three things that just stand out that kind of really just, as we went through this process, and there's others, but it's kind of one of those things that that's kind of been her DNA going through it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a good reflection, I think, too, with parents, athletes, really look at where their heart is at. I feel like a lot of times, we hear the stories of parents projecting onto athletes or not really hearing fully the athlete. And so, you really seeing who she is like that, it reflects in what she did, and it reflects in, her outcome really of what she accomplished. And continues to accomplish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say, what would be your number one biggest piece of advice for parents and athletes on the recruiting journey?
Well, number one, come see me, right? So because I can help big time. I think the one thing that just really stands out, and I just posted on this the other day. There's so many things, right? There's so many things, but my biggest thing is you can't allow the journey. You can't leave this journey up to chance. So you just can't. A lot of times, athletes just feel like if I'm playing on a certain team, even on these high level teams, if I'm playing on this team, I don't have to do any more work. I don't have to do anything more to this, because what will happen is I'm going to show up to a tournament and the coach will see me play. They're going to like what I'm doing, and I'm going to make this catch, rob somebody's home run or hit a home run, and they'll see me, and then they're going to want to sign me. And then there we go. Like, then my recruiting journey is over. And it's like, unless you're throwing 70 miles an hour, or unless you're doing something crazy, that's not how the journey is going to go. So, you can't you can't leave this journey up to chance, because if you do that, you're going to miss, there's so many components that there has to be an active participation from the athlete majority and parents as well. It's all part of that. You have to be incredibly active in this process to ensuring that we're going to get the results that we need. Some of it is going to be, actually, a lot of it is going to be behind closed doors. How the things that nobody's seeing is, all the things that you need to be doing. Are you doing all those things right? Because if you look at a lot of these athletes in college, there's some commonness to them. Like, what I ask them, what did you do? And then it's kind of the same things of working behind closed doors, putting in the hours when nobody else would. You got to be doing those things. So it's one of those things that you just got to kind of be doing. But it's can't leave your recruiting journey up to chance. And then you got to have a plan. I mean, that's just one of those things. It's like, if you don't have that, so that's that education piece that I provide and talking about, we can't leave it up to chance, and here's why. And then now let's create the plan, which involves so many aspects of this. So we got to create the plan, and we got to create it now, and then we got to start living it day in and day out, because that's what it's going to take to try to get to that next level. So that's probably my one advice is that, and there's so many others, but that's probably the one that just kind of comes to mind.
No, I love that. Like, not leaving it up to chance, and then the plan piece, like that. That's with anything. Like with nutrition, again, you have to have a plan, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Yes, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but it's about building the systems, building the habits, building those things that just become second nature, so you don't have to think about it as much. So then you're
Right.
just already doing those things naturally.
And then it makes for an easy transition into the next.
Yes.
There's that transition level that happens. And if you're not already if you don't have those processes and things that you've been doing day in and day out, you're going to show up to the next level. If you've made it that far, you've been able to do that. If you do not have that in place, you have a lot of catch up to do. And that's going to make that transition even more difficult. So if you have those foundational pieces in place, that transition should go fairly seamless to that next level. So it's not that big of a jump. It's going to be a jump, but it's not like, oh my goodness, that I don't know how I'm going to do that, because they're not prepared for that, because they haven't been doing it day in, day out, all the way through.
I mean, we see it with people going on diets and then they gain the weight back. It's the exact, I always think about that, because it's the same thing. Like you do this temporary thing that you can't stick to, and then you don't have any sort of foundation like you're talking about. And so, we could keep going on that, but
absolutely. And that's where I come into this whole mix. It's like, because sometimes throughout this journey, they need somebody to there's the encouragement. There's things that are going to happen that they need that, because sometimes they want to give up. They're like, I don't know if I want to do this. So we have to have, it's like, I look at it as like bowling, and you put the bumper guards on, it's like you just, I remember when Crimson was starting to bowl, it's like that bowling ball's never going to make it down there. We got to get the bumper guards going so that she throws it, and we have a system to help guide, and we're still moving in a direction, but we still have these bumper guards in place to get us to where we're going eventually. If we don't have that along the journey, they're gonna, like in your world too, they're not gonna make it, because they don't have that support that they need.
Yeah. No, that's so true. So going back to Crimson to wrap this up, if I were to ask Crimson the question, was it all worth it? And what do you think she would say?
She would say 100% yes. And it's one of those things that I talk with her most every day. She'll get, sometimes it's like she's going from one class to the next, and it's like 30 seconds, or it's a minute, or if we get a chance, because her schedule is is insanely busy, I might get a half hour, just to how are things. But then she's come home for break. So actually it's been really good because she's come home for break for Christmas, and then she's headed on back and we've had a chance to talk, just reflect back on. And I ask the question always like, how was it? Give me your assessment, just thus far. And she's like, Dad, this was absolute the best decision I've ever made in my life because it's checking all the boxes for her. She's challenged beyond measure. She's playing at the D1 level. So, just raising her game to the next level. So she's embraced the challenges. She's embraced this process. And she's one, we reflect to say what we did worked, from a strength training, from a skills development, from all the things. This transition has been fairly seamless. Yes, it's hard and we're kind of going up the mountain. So there's going to be hardships there, but she was prepared for it. So that just confirms to us like what we were doing was the right way. And she's then providing feedback. And I'm asking, were you prepared? Yes. Loves the coaching staff, loves her teammates, loves the environment, loves everything about it, And so it's one of those, as a parent, I'm just like, yes, like that. We did everything that we possibly could to help her achieve her goals and dreams. But like I said, she was the one that said it from the beginning. And honestly, she was dragging us along. Like she's like, because there was even times where I'm like, hey kid, I don't know if I really want to drive to Seattle, like I'm kind of tired, or I don't know if I want to catch this bullpen today because I'm kind of tired. And she looks at me like, you are taking me, you are catching me. And I'm like, okay, and so off we go. But she's the one that's really kind of pushing, which, and now, it's just the coolest thing for a parent to watch her compete. And she pitched against UConn. She pitched against St. John. She's pitching against these teams in the fall and doing a great job. And I just couldn't be more proud of her and what she's doing. But she's the one that did it. She's the one that earned it. I kind of helped. I always say this, it's like my job as a parent was to put the right people in her path. So she didn't quite know where to go, what to do, but I could pick up the phone or I can like start trying to put the right people in her path that could help her be successful, because I can only take her so far in certain things. I'm not the expert in pitching. I've become that more because we're working with, but there are people that I don't have that knowledge, that we make sure that we get those people like the yous and the me's, get them in now their path, because that's what we're going to need to help, our athletes get to the next level. So that was kind of my mission, but she would say 100% yes. Best decision that she's made. It's been an amazing journey, and the good and the bad. It's kind of made up what her journey is, and I'm just so proud of her, and I'm just excited for, what her future, and not only just in softball, but what that will look like afterwards, because she's setting herself up, because we talk about it. What is it after softball? What is that going to look like? And so we have those discussions, but yeah, best decision she's made. She's having the time of her life.
No, that's awesome. And that's where, again, it's athlete led. I think that's a key thing for any parent listening to, is like an athlete, like it should be athlete led. It should not be led by the dragged by the parent, like it,
Right.
And so that's where, again, you look at like what's going on inside of them. But yeah, so Luke, I really appreciate you hopping on today and just sharing the whole journey for Crimson, and just the amount of value that you provide as well. And so athletes and parents, like, you, regardless of if softball is your sport or not, you should go follow Luke, go check him out, check the show notes. You got his details down there, and really check him out, because regardless, you're going to get stuff, you're going to take some stuff away from what he has to share, and be sure to share this with your softball audience as well. So yeah, thanks again, Luke.
Hey, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, of course. And for athletes out there, keep striving for greatness.